Hi, my name is Joanne C. Hillhouse, a writer from Antigua and Barbuda, and this is Creative Space. This is a space where I talk about all things art and culture from Antigua and Barbuda and the Caribbean. This week, I'm tackling a topic that's very close to my heart: books, books, books. I love books. I write books. I love to read books. And this week, I was as my special guest, an authority on books, an author in her own right, and also a book retailer, Barbara Arrindell. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Joanne. Good to be here in your creative space.
And congratulations, Barbara, on being a well, not newly because you published before, but published for the first time with Collins as part of the Big Cat series of children's books. They're rolling out a series of Caribbean own voices books, and yours is one of the first, Turtle Beach. Congratulations. I have my copy.
Yeah, in a strange way. I mean, it's really unusual to be able to say, and congratulations right back at you, since it's published in the same series on the exact same day. So congrats to you also.
Yes, twinsies, twinsies, twinsies. So people, this book has been published. This is Turtle Beach in my book. The Jungle Outside, forgot to name my own book for a second. But it is part of the Big Cat series that's been rolled out by Collins, and it's sort of encouraging the telling and the sharing of stories from the Caribbean. And the UK edition of this book is out, and it's also now available in Antigua. So congratulations, Barbara. Congratulations, Joanne. We're here. Well, we're here today to talk about other people's books. We're here today to talk about bestsellers. That is the books that have done really well in 2020 from Antigua and Barbuda. I've always thought that we should have like a Caribbean bestsellers list, like a weekly, monthly thing like they do in other parts of the world. But as far as I know, we don't have one. Do you know of one, Barbara?
Not aware, nothing formal. I mean, there are lots of sites, I think, online now where people talk about books, talk about Caribbean books, but nothing that I'm aware of right now.
And in terms of assessing which books are the top sellers, what I asked Barbara to do was to give me a sense of, we don't have like a formal, this was the number 10, number 9, number 8, that sort of thing based on this amount of sales relative to that amount of sales. What we have is a sense of, her sense of what books have done well. And I found, I don't know if you find this surprising, Barbara, but when I looked at the list that you sent me, most of the top selling books from Antigua are nonfiction. Is that surprising to you?
Yeah, actually it was. I'll say that when I realized that quite a few inspirational books were up there, I will say that it seems to be a little bit different than years gone by. I will say there was a time when lots of people brought in inspirational books and they often sat there on the shelf.
Okay.
We have, I think, a whole other level and, can I say, quality, and also people who are understanding the importance of pushing their work as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we then find, people are able to connect. It's not a prayer book only, nothing wrong with a prayer book.
With people telling their stories of their lives in a way that can
and daring also to inspire people in other ways to actually give some level of advice and without preaching. So yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, so we're going to go through the top nonfiction books from Antigua and Barbuda, and you're going to tell me a little bit about, not about the books necessarily, but about what you think. Well, you spoke a little bit about the inspirational books, but why you think these books resonated so well with the buying, reading public. And the first one is actually not an inspirational book, although it could be. It's a political book. It's the autobiography of our former Prime Minister and national hero, the Honorable Lester Bird. It's this book, The Comeback Kid, which he wrote with Lionel Max Hurst.
That's correct. And yes, I found it quite interesting the entire process of acquiring the book, having the book in the bookstore, I'll tell you the quick story. I actually remember someone came into the bookstore and said in a very stern voice, Lester Bird is outside, he wants to speak to you. And I thought, okay. So I went outside and Mr. Bird was in his Jeep and he said, Miss Arrindell, would you sell my books if I asked you to? And I said, of course, I sell all books. And it began from there. And then I think I was in contact with his daughter who supplied us from then on. And these books have sold quite well.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they came out just before Christmas, which is a good time to be having your book published. And of course, he's a person of interest. He's someone that people actually want to know who he is, a little bit about his story. And of course, you know, someone like Mr. Bird will always also bring us some level of controversy to anything that's happening. So as is the case with other books that I have, can I say, promoted, there would have been people coming to me and saying, how come you have that book? And for me, whenever I hear that, I think, yeah, that's good, because there's something going on there. But just interest. This is a person who led the country and someone who was an athlete. I've always said when I taught public speaking, I told my students that Lester Bryant Bird was one of the better speakers that Antigua has ever produced. And, you know, that has nothing to do with anybody's political allegiance or anything, but just, I can remember being a 19, 20-year-old listening to him speak at a non-political gathering and being mesmerized by him. So yes, I think that he has, in his own right, done enough in Antigua and Barbuda that people want to know more about him. And so yes, that book sold for the first part of the year.
Another one that's been doing very well based on what you've told me is in the world of business is The First Aid Kit by Joan Underwood. Am I getting the title right?
That's correct, yes. The First Aid Kit is a manager's guide. And same thing, Joan brought her book out. So the Comeback Kid was the end of last year into the beginning of this year. And Joan Underwood's book came out just before Christmas this year. And it's moved into the early part of this year, of 2021. And of course, Joan is a pretty well-known person, also a political figure in her own right in Antigua and beyond, as having served as an ambassador for Antigua at some point. She's also a well-known lecturer, and she lectures with the University of the West Indies, and she does her own work privately. So I believe she's worked with enough business places and people for people to trust her and know that what she has to say is probably something worth reading, worth listening to. So yes, she's done very well with her work.
Another one that's been selling well, that continues to sell well, I think I'm going to group these two together, two old favorites. One is The Way We Talk by Joy Lawrence, and one is To Shoot Hard Labor by Keithlin and Fernando Smith, telling the story of the life of Papa Sammy Smith. I know that this year we had, in the case of To Shoot Hard Labor, we had on Observer Radio a whole month-long book club discussion about the book, and that might have affected the boost in sales that that book saw. Rest in peace to Keithlin Smith, by the way. He died shortly after that month of celebration of the book wrapped. But The Way We Talk, I'm understanding, is also still doing big numbers. And these books kind of fall into the category of culture, Antigua's culture, Antigua's history, and Antigua's way of life. Tell me about why you think these books still resonate.
Same reason you just said. I think you've said it all there. Yes, they're about Antigua's culture and our history, and people are always, people are always interested, and even more so now. We're becoming more aware, I think, of who we are and the importance of knowing ourselves and of knowing where we've come from. I've had discussions with a friend concerning the change in the way we've moved from perhaps at some point some of our parents, grandparents not wanting to talk about the past, perhaps because it was painful, not wanting to speak the way our grandparents spoke. Now we're coming to understand that this is who we are. This is our story. Let's know it. Let's learn about it. Let's pass it on so that any mistakes made back then won't be repeated. whether they be mistakes that we made or people made, that hurt us. And then in terms of Joy's book, The Way We Talk, I find that one is purchased mainly or more so by tourists and Antiguans who live abroad.
That's
So
interesting.
we want to carry that back home as a
keepsake.
Hmm?
A keepsake.
A keepsake, and also something to share with their children and the other members of the family overseas. I'm amused sometimes when an Antiguan comes in with their American-born child, and the American-born child is trying to keep up with the dialect, or maybe trying to pretend they don't understand it. I'm not sure which one. And somewhere in there, the parent is saying, well, I'm getting you a book so you can better understand. And the child is doing what perhaps teenagers particularly will do. But yes, it's part of perhaps ensuring the culture is understood. Of course, there's more in her book than simply the words. There's some explanation about certain things that we do. I mean, Joy's books in general continue to sell, but that one in particular, because it has a particular audience, that sells well.
Well, what I found with one of the things that connects both those books for me is I was introduced to to Papa Sammy's book in school, and I've actually used Joy's book in the classroom. There's a lot that you can glean there from the underpinnings of our culture and our history. In terms of, I mean, the book says The Way We Talk. It's talking about not just how we say certain things, but the reasons why we speak in that way, the history behind the language, the origins of certain words, and so on, and the connective tissue between Africa and ourselves. And in the case of Papa Sammy's book, similarly, connecting us to our ancestral history in a way that, you know, the books that you or I might have studied in school and we were coming up would not have given us that access to that part of ourselves. So I find it useful, both of them, as supplemental reading for the classroom.
Certainly, and of course, just for enjoyment as well.
Speaking of the classroom, another book that's selling well is this woman's story is very, well, you tell the story. I think you know who I'm talking about, the textbooks, the social studies textbooks. Tell us about this author and how she, well, just to give a little preamble, she self-published, and the books were so well received by other teachers and by students that it attracted the interest of an international publisher who has now reissued those books, a whole series of them that is now in the classroom. Tell us about it.
What I can say is that it's been instant success. And the Ministry of Education adopted the books right away. And they were in the classroom, you know, as soon as the books were hot off the press, they were in the classrooms in Antigua and Barbuda. So the publishers sort of got the buy-in even before they produced them, because these books are exclusively for Antigua. It means then that thousands of them are being printed. So there was the need to ensure that they were in fact going to be accepted and wanted here. And so the first, I believe it was the first 3 came out. I believe those would have been grade 6 and perhaps K and 1. And others have subsequently been released and are in the classroom. There might be one class still to receive their books, or one level that is still to be completed. I'm not certain, but yeah, it's been good. It's
Just
been
look,
good.
can you see the covers?
Of course.
Just look at them. I mean, this is Antiguan and Barbudan textbooks. How do we know? We have the frigate bird, we have the hawksbill turtle, we have the fallow deer, we have things that represent our culture, the Antigua black pineapple. I absolutely love it.
Well, you know, I am associated with that publisher, and I can remember when these covers were being discussed, you know, when there were other choices and, you know, decisions about where to place each one and that sort of thing. And I remember almost leaving that discussion. I kind of sat there, let other people discuss, other Caribbean booksellers. You know, I let them say, oh, this is more beautiful than that, or that is what, and just sort of sat there beaming with pride. You know, because, you know, I've seen this done with other books from other places, and it's just great to see a book that's ours. And
it makes me happy. It really does. It makes me happy. One, how she did it, that she actually came to the table with leverage as someone who's proven that her product has value. but also that we have something here that truly represents us in the classroom, and that she was actually problem solving. She was responding to a gap that she saw and creating content to fill that gap.
Okay. And I will say, but not say too much, that there's going to be another series similar to this being done for Antigua and Barbuda. And that's as much as I can say about it for now. But I will also say that the social studies books might become the base for books that will be used in our neighboring islands. Because, of course, although social studies, there's some things which are specific to Antigua and Barbuda, there are also some things which are general.
Yeah.
And so there's been an interest shown by teachers in other islands willing to actually use these books, but saying, well, that, little thing there about that's so specific to Antigua makes it not quite what I want in my classroom. So there's a possibility that this author's work, perhaps in association with somebody else, might be in classrooms in other islands in the Caribbean.
You love to see it. I love to see it. That is amazing news. That is amazing news. You heard it here first on Creative Space. Now, now we're going to, since we've touched on social studies, we're going to delve back into history a little bit, because another big seller has been Agnes Meeker's Plantations of Antigua, which is hefty, 3 hefty volumes. I mean, who is the audience for that?
Everybody. And yet, of course, there'll be some people who have no interest. That's what it's like with every book, isn't it? But I know that it sells very well at the museum. Agnes, did a launch for the first set of books, and I believe she's done, launches for the others. But at the museum, I know that she sold out almost instantly on that launch night, and they've continued to sell very well. So, undoubtedly, historians, people interested in our history, this is something documenting a bit of our past, and it is for everyone. There are people who will say, well, why do we want to know about the plantations? They were bad places. The fact is that the plantations were a part of a period of our time, a period of Antigua and Barbuda history, and they're part of who we are as well.
Definitely, and a lot of the plantation names still live with us today, because a lot of our villages are named after those plantations. I live in Clarks Hill. You have Buckley's, you have Jennings. All these are named after people who were once plantation owners.
Not just places, but we the people, the names that we carry as
of course, yeah.
Because you have a Mr. Buckley somewhere, there's a famous man named Mr. Buckley. We're going to leave that alone for another discussion, perhaps, if you don't want to talk history with me. And so yes, almost all of those, they're Clarks. They're people with all the names, because obviously those plantations were named often after their owners, and those owners owned human beings, unfortunately. And those human beings took the names, and in some cases, those human beings were the descendants, the direct descendants of those plantation owners. So they had every right, quote unquote, to the name as well. So yeah, it's us, it's who we are. It's part of our history. And it's really good that Agnes has in fact documented this, because, what we do with writing like that is that the information is there, but someone has to do the tedious work of pulling it all together. And she's done that for us now. And so it's there for future generations. And, the historian in me is very happy. Somebody else will build on that to find information for other things, because that bit of history is there.
Okay, I regrettably don't have a cover for the next one, but this person is also part of our history. Dame Gwendolyn Tongue, the late Dame Gwendolyn Tongue, had the longest running show in Antigua, certainly, but I also think more widely in the Caribbean, prove me wrong, and TV show, that is, local TV show. And the show still continues to this day with her daughter, and it's the best-selling cookbook out of Antigua, if I'm correct on that. Is that right?
You're correct on that. There's no doubt about that. Cooking Magic continues to sell. Once we have it in the store, once our son is able to get us supplies constantly, it sells, and it sells to everybody. It sells because cookbooks, when a person visits another country, a cookbook is something that's an easy gift to take back with you, whether for a gift for yourself or something you're going to share with somebody else. And so our guests, our visitors, our tourists, they come and they collect it. But Antiguans, those same people who come and buy the way we talk for their children, they want their children to know how to make dokana and saltfish or fungi and pepper pots, since those two things go together, and other treats that we have locally. And so that book will always sell. I mean, one of the issues right now is that I'm seeing people a little bit reluctant because it is not the most modern looking
I was
cookbook.
just thinking that because you've had other cookbooks come out from Antigua and other places, and it's all about presentation. You have these glossy pictures of the food and whatever. But with Cooking Magic, it's basically the recipes. It's very sort of matter of fact.
And I know that Auntie Gwen's daughter Erna May has given thought to modernizing the cookbook, and I hope that she will. I'm sure she will, because no matter what, we have to move forward with what's going on. And as I said, I am seeing, although people still buy it, I see the hesitation, because many people have said, but I want to know what it should look like, especially the tourists. We know what a ball of fun should look like. They're not quite sure. They saw something sliced up in the hotel that made it a little bit differently to the way Auntie Gwen may have made it. And so they're looking for pictures to go along with it, or at least, if not actual pictures, perhaps some sort of graphic that helps them along the way. And of course, the returning national who's trying to get their son or daughter, or, the other group of people who tend to buy it, students leaving Antigua. So it's people who are leaving their parents' home for the first time. Or I found when they come back that first summer, they come in to get it, because all of a sudden they're missing all the things from home. Or
Okay.
they've gone off to, let's say, UE, or a college that actually embraces Caribbean diversity, and you get a day, Caribbean Day or Independence Day or something, and they're being asked to produce something that's from their home country. And so after the first year of not knowing how to do it right, they come home, collect Cooking Magic, so they can go back and make whatever it is that they're choosing to make, and they have that on display as well. So Cooking Magic, once it's being published, it's going to sell. Hopefully we'll have an updated version of it as well shortly.
Well, I think by now Ernest should have more than enough images, because I know that she, with the series, she's very social media savvy in terms of promoting the book, because there are tons of pictures from each episode. I know this because I was a guest on Cooking Magic, and there's like tons of pictures being taken and lots of food to eat and so on. So I think she has enough material now to think about updating the book. So hint, hint, Ernest.
I'm just going to quickly say that it's one of the few books that I ensured that I kept. So Auntie Gwen, at some point, I think it was one of the literary festivals here, and we were doing something together, and all of a sudden she called me over. Of course, if Auntie Gwen calls you, you go quickly. And she said to me, I don't know if you have it or not, but this is yours. And she'd autographed it for me with a little message.
Cool.
And yeah, really, really cool. And I'm not necessarily big on collecting autographed books or anything, but it's there, and no, nobody can borrow it. Plain and simple. She gave it to me because she wanted me to have it. And even if Erna came to ask me for it, she couldn't get it, because she wouldn't want it. But yeah, I prize it.
The other category that's big with your shoppers is children's books. Yeah. Am I right about that?
You are definitely right about that. And, I will just take off with those, because for me, what we've seen is that, there have been a few people self-publishing children's books. There's no doubt about that. And when they do, those books will sell for a bit, and then sometimes they simply sort of fade away. Two of your books have stayed there on that list, and they have become things that the people are looking for. One of interest to me more recently was your young adult novel, Musical Youth. And I'll tell that quick story of, once the second edition came out, it seemed as though a lot of young people thought it was part 2. And so they came into the bookstore saying they come in for part 2 of Musical Youth. And we had to disappoint them and say to them, no, it's the same book. And what I found interesting was that it meant they actually liked it, because many of them said we read it in school. Now, maybe you and I enjoyed the books we read in school, but not everybody does, because literature apparently is not a favorite subject anymore. But these young people had read the book in school more than likely, and or maybe they got it as a gift at some point, and they wanted to come and find out what happened to these people in the book. They wanted part 2. So you were dropping hints for somebody else. I'm dropping hints for you.
I tell them what, they're not alone. I want to find out too. I always envisioned Musical Youth as a series. I don't know if you remember Sweet Valley High books in school back in the day. I kind of envisioned the way we followed the Mayfield twins. Is it Mayfield? Anyway, the twin sisters in Sweet Valley High. I always envisioned following the kids in Musical Youth, at least up until the graduation of the main character, to see, you know, where they went. I just haven't had the time to write it yet. So that's where we are. So I sympathize with them because I'm in the same boat. I want to know too.
Okay, so we know that one is there, and of course, because the book has received many, well, it's been recognized so well in this last year, it's obviously generated more interest once again. And then we move to the other book that's doing really well that you've written, which is Lost. And Lost is something that I've found that people are picking up as a gift item locally for children. So the birthday party, and they come in and say, a birthday party for a 6-year-old, 7-year-old. What about the book that John Hillhouse writes? You have that? Yes. And of course, it's available in Spanish as well. Not that many are selling Spanish editions here, but they are selling as well. So that book to me is becoming a regular or favorite, as something that people are buying as a gift for the children in their lives, or for the birthday party their child has been invited to. You know, so that's fantastic. And I believe that the success of Lost, and I won't even pretend that I can pronounce the Spanish name for it. I'll let you do that.
Barbuda.
Right, that one. And the success of those books, you know, will lead people to run in looking for, and they already have started looking for, The Jungle Outside. But you brought up Antigua, My Antigua, and this is a book that I can I say I wrote. It's a coloring book. I designed it, and yes, there's some words in there, so I wrote those. And of course, Edison Liebert actually
Okay,
did.
pause. You're underselling the book. This book is one of the books that I bought for one of my nephews when they were younger, and it's one of the books that we sat down, we colored together. It's a coloring book, so you can do with your kids and so on, and it tells you, it shows you historical sites and places of interest in Antigua. So yes, the artwork is delightful, but the actual gathering of the information and framing of the story is also Miss Arrindell. So I won't let her undersell that.
Thank you very much. So yes, I've found that just as Lost is the favorite for people here, Antigua, My Antigua, I'm disappointed it's not purchased more here, and maybe even schools, that sort of thing. Because I thought it was a great, almost little social studies book for, you know, the little children to get to know our island.
I would agree.
I found that it's actually a favorite again among visitors leaving. Because think about it, when you go on vacation, the one person you have to take back a gift for is a little person in your life. And Antigua, My Antigua tells the little person about your vacation. And so they buy it, I think, for that reason. I mean, locals are buying it, Antiguans are buying it as well. But the interest, you know, the excitement seems often to be the people who go, wow, look at this thing we have here. You know, and I mean, I appreciate that.
What I would say, sorry, go ahead.
Too. I do hope that we here will, you know, will enjoy it as much as other people do.
What I would say, in the same way that Anthea's books found their way, because there's several of them, into the classroom, I actually always thought that a book like Antigua, My Antigua, if we're talking about early childhood education, and even Lost and Perdita in the sense of, you know, creating a gateway to teaching another language by accessing the language that by using the language that they already know. But we're talking about Antigua, My Antigua. Children do what in kindergarten and preschool? They color. They do things like that. They can color and learn about Antigua at the same time. So whoever's in charge of buying books for that level, think about it. That's what I would say about that. Because I've always felt that it would work really well at that level. And Barbara won't say it, but I love the book and I will say it.
Well, I will just jump in, even though we haven't mentioned this here. There's a new book that's out by Margaret Irish. It's a coloring book. It's an alphabet coloring book about Antigua. I think it's called Arawak. I'm not sure.
I didn't realize it was out. I know about it, but I didn't realize it was out.
Just as in maybe a day or two ago, she brought them in for me to take a look at. And I would say that I'm also working on a coloring book. I was hoping actually it would have been out around Christmas time last year, but of course life changed in 2020 a lot.
What? How? How did life change?
and the young man who is actually doing some of the artwork or doing the artwork, I think he's still working on it at this point in time. So we'll see what happens as we move forward.
Can you give us a teaser?
It's an alphabet book, basically. You know, it's drawing. I wanted it to be something that's undoubtedly to be used for kindergarten children and preschoolers. So it's just going to be it's very basic. It's going to have the outline of various Antiguan and Barbudan things. And yeah, hopefully once it is produced, it will be available. And we can't have too many of those books, you know. There's enough space for all of them. And as with everything else that's being published and produced in terms of books, I encourage everybody to get in there, get into that little market that we have of Antiguan and Barbudan books and try your best. We need more biographies, more Antiguan and Barbudan autobiographies. There's some people who I have bugged a little bit, and I will bug them more, to write their stories and tell their stories so we can inspire our own people to realize just how great we are.
I second that. I believe we have one more book that's a top seller to discuss. It's written, it actually segues nicely from what you just said about writing our own stories, because it's written by an Antiguan child. You know which book I'm talking about?
I think it's The Little Rude Boys and Girls, that one, is it?
Yes, that's kind of wild that is, I've read it and I can see why. And it's actually pretty deep when you get into it. It's about these kids kind of just telling the story of what they did over a summer, but also grappling with something that becomes very serious. But you get the sense that it's from children's voices. Tell me who's buying it and why you think it's doing so well.
I know somebody has mentioned something about a change of cover. I'm not too certain. I mean, I'm not remembering in detail what the first cover looked like.
This is the second cover. Can you see it?
It looks like. So it's very different. I think that perhaps the second cover is more appealing to us and to our children. And so shortly before Christmas, I think someone...
No, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. What do you mean? Which cover are you referring to?
This one, the one that you're showing right now.
This is the first cover.
Is it the first cover?
Yes.
Okay, so what's it?
And this is the second cover.
Okay, the books that are selling right now are the ones, this one. That's what we have in the store right now.
I've only ever seen the new cover online, and I don't know. It's different.
I would say that I've never seen that book itself in Antigua. So perhaps they have different covers for different markets.
Do you have thoughts on that, about the idea of what covers, because you have to think about that a lot as a bookseller, where to place covers to attract this and that customer. Does it make a difference what race of the character is that's on the cover?
I think it definitely would. I mean, I think that we've mentioned when we spoke about Keithlin Smith, Sir Keithlin's books and that sort of thing, we mentioned that we are becoming more aware of ourselves and appreciating ourselves even more. And I think that there is something to be said for having Caribbean books that look like Caribbean books. Of course, the Caribbean is made up of all people of all different colors and shapes and sizes and ethnicities. But it's hard to imagine a Caribbean book that does not include people of African descent and who look as if they are of African descent.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm actually glad to hear that the one with the first cover is actually selling really well. It means that people are responding to some that looks like them.
Right. And timing is an amazing thing because perhaps, still going back to that idea that, we are evolving and we are starting to understand our own value. This book 10 years later, to me, seems to be getting a better response almost than it did in the beginning. In the beginning, I mean, it sold then, no doubt about it, but now it's selling simply by being on the shelf.
Okay.
If you understand what I'm
So
saying.
it's, yeah, I get what you're saying. So it means that there's a, that almost like the market has opened up organically over time. People have become, you don't have to do that as hard of a sell to get them to see our books, our voices as being as interesting, as entertaining, as worthy as, I don't know, the J.K. Rowlings, the Harry Potters. I know that was a big explosion at a certain time. That's why I'm not knocking anybody, but that was a big one at the time.
Yeah.
So it's good to see our books hopefully climbing up that ladder in time. We can have big sales as well.
Brings us back to where you started in terms of discussing the fact that the Big Cat series now includes a Caribbean selection of books. First 4 of them are out and hopefully available in Antigua soon because only the sample books are here, not the for sale books. But soon, and I mean, as people listen to this recording in weeks and months to come, hopefully they are here and they will always be here. And of course,
can you mention the other titles?
Sure. The 4 books in total include a book on sea turtles, so it's actually a fact book, and that's done by Carol Mitchell. And then there is the book, I think it's called Finny. You may remember.
Finny the Fairy Fish by Diana Macaulay from Jamaica. Yes.
Oh, right. And then there's some person named Joanne Hillhouse who's done a book.
Who is that? I don't know who that is. Yeah.
Jungle Outside, and I know that Xavier Archibald has illustrated a book, and apparently the author is someone from Antigua as well. So yeah, there are those 4 books that will be available, and I think it's fantastic. And you look at the books and you see that they're Caribbean books, and the response even. I mean, I'll say this.
Beautifully illustrated Caribbean books. I was looking through The Jungle Outside today, Barbara, and I was reading it with the delight of someone who didn't write it. Like, I'm just enjoying these images by Daniel Budu Fortuné, Trinidadian artist. I was looking through Turtle Beach, Xavier's artwork. Her style is so distinctive and so almost.
She's brilliant, plain and simple. Yeah. She's brilliant. What she's done, I mean, to help the people listening to this, we were all asked to give details of what we wanted to see in terms of the artwork. At least I know I was. And to me, she took my thoughts and she somehow created almost exactly what I had in my head. That's the way it felt. With very little other input, well, no other input other than what I actually put on the page and submitted to the...
No actual communication between you and her, just...
Right. And it's everything I would have wanted it to be. The people look as if they're our people, and they're a mix of people in the storybook. And, and I say that because there are times when I've seen some books that are supposed to be our books, and the people look the way perhaps other people think we look.
Mm-hmm. What I liked about it as well, just to put a pin on that, is yes, the people, but also the environment feels like someone who's walked on those beaches and seen the quality of the light at night in the Caribbean and all those things. But at the same time, there's a magical quality to her interpretation of that scenery that I find really beautiful. So I mean, books are beautiful, and I hope people go out and get them. So we're going to be wrapping up shortly, but I do want to talk a little bit about what you can do to support the books that you like and the authors that you like. One of the initiatives that both Barbara and I are involved with is the Wadadli Youth Pen Prize. And the Wadadli Youth Pen Prize, one of its programs, will be launching the annual writing challenge at some point. But we also have a Read Antigua Barbuda initiative, which we started a couple of years ago. And the idea was to spotlight books by Antiguans and Barbudans and get people to vote for their favorites. So I'd just like to direct people to the Wadadli Pen blog, withoutthepen.wordpress.com, to encourage them to look through the books, go buy them. If you don't have the money to buy them, borrow them from the library. If you've read them already, whatever it is, vote and support the authors, because that's how I want to end. I want to talk about how you can support the authors and the books that you like. Barbara, do you have any tips on that point?
Sure. I mean, first of all, plain and simple, read them, so, and read what you're interested in. I'm not saying that I'm not reading every book that's written by an Antiguan author just because the person is from Antigua and Barbuda. I'm reading books that are of interest to me. And the wonderful thing is that, I've been in the book industry now for about 25 years, half my life. And, I remember going from a section of Antiguan books that was this big to now having an entire shelf, with shelves, entire bookshelf with 6 or more shelves, and knowing that there are many other Antigua and Barbuda books out there that we aren't selling, that there are many of them which are online only because people are publishing ebooks exclusively. So, you have no reason not to buy them or to check them out and try them. I want to say our books are as good, and in some ways they're better. It's fantastic to be able to read books that talk about a tamarind tree that you actually sat under, or to books that talk about mango trees and dump trees and other things like that. And yeah, why not? That's one of the first things, why not? But also the why, because on the positive side of things, why should you? Because you're Antigua and Barbuda, and because you're Caribbean, because these things are done by people like you, and because we as Antiguans and Barbudans need to continue, because we are doing it, continue to support our own. We have to support each other. So, if you buy a book by somebody online and it only costs $2 or $3, you're helping an author to feel better, to know that somebody wants to read his or her work. And of course, you're helping financially if it makes it to the author, because we know that it's a really small amount that often makes it to the person who wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, do that. And as you said, share it. Write reviews. So if you like it or if you don't like it, either way, write something about it so somebody else knows about that book, and discuss it, and create book groups, create book chats. People are right now stuck at home. I know there have been a few people who have actually started doing book chats via Zoom or otherwise. I mean, outside of this, they were doing a Shakespeare book chat with some older Antiguans. So why not take up one of the books by an Antiguan and do a book chat with that? So yes, and of course, Withoutly Pen is something which is just so amazing. The impact it's had on so many people. When you look at these books that have been published recently, many of these young people, many of these people were once young people who were taking part in the Withoutly challenge, the Withoutly Pen challenge. And so business places, individuals, nothing's too small. I think I can say that, Joanna. Is that okay?
100%. 100%, yeah.
Purchase a book, whether it be from the bookstore or somewhere else. Purchase a book, any book, and donate it as a prize to the Withoutly Pen challenge. Or of course there are other things, because it's not just books, but if you're in business and there's something you can do to support local art and craft, writing, then do it, whatever it is. If your service can be offered, if your space can be provided, if your internet access can be utilized, whatever it is, I know that you can contact Joanne or you can contact me. I'll put you on to Joanne.
Well, withoutlypen@gmail.com, that's our email address. So you can always reach out to us that way. You can reach out to Barbara by bookstore as well, Best of Books bookstore, and you can find me many places online. I was going to say, one of the things that that people can do is, you have a very vibrant booktube community, you have a very vibrant book blogging community, you have a very vibrant Bookstagram community, and I'm sure there's a book Twitter community as well. I don't know the name for that, but the idea is that you like a book, just tell somebody about it. You don't have to be great at writing reviews. Just say, this book, great book, whatever. Just pick up the book if you like it and spread the word, kind of ripple the waters, I like to say. So it's important to celebrate the books that you love, because by doing so, you help to create more books, because it gives writers the space and the time and the currency to write.